Alright, so now we need to be able to update our customer info, and rather than the traditional click on it and it takes you to a page where you can edit a form, I just wanted to make it do something a little different and use the HTML5 content editable attribute, which allows us to just click on the inline text and just edit it, and then when we click outside of it, it'll update. Alright, so what we need to do is first add those attributes. So in our generated HTML here, we want to go to our spans, and what we're going to do is just add the content editable attribute and set that to true. Okay, we want to do that for the name span and the email span. So now if we go ahead and reload and click on, you can see that I can edit this, okay? And it stays that way, but if I reload the page, the original text comes back, and that's because we've only added HTML. We haven't added our JavaScript, which is needed to process it, alright, or to power it, whatever you want to call it. But before we do that, I want to make this look a little better. I don't like how there's no padding in the form or in the input box, so I'm going to first I'm going to add a class actually to the span tag. Okay, we're going to need them for something else anyway, so we're going to give this a class of cursor and also customer, and I'll do the same thing with the email. Alright, so now let's go to the CSS file, and let's see, for the cursor class, I just want to change the point when you hover over a name or an email. I want the cursor to change to a pointer. Alright, so cursor pointer, just so they know that they can click on it. Okay, so you can see it now changes when I hover over the text, changes to a pointer. Okay, now I want to add a little padding to this as well. So in the style sheet, let's see, we want span with the class of customer. Okay, so padding, I'm going to add 8 pixels for the top and bottom and 20 pixels for the right and left. Okay, so now when we click on it, that looks better. Okay, so that's it for the physical aspect of this. Now we need to deal with the actual functionality. Now applying this functionality to these elements is going to be a little different. We're not going to create a customary function like we have with the other functionality. Alright, so what we want to say is when we click on a span with the class of customer, which is any of these, we want to run a function. Okay, I'm sorry, not when we click on it, but when we edit it and then we click out of it. Okay, that's called a blur. That's a blur event. Okay, so we want to use that. Alright, so update customers. Okay, so we want to grab, we're going to use the on method. Okay, so we're going to delegate the blur event. So let's see, customers, which is the ID of the entire row. Okay, and then we're going to say dot on, and the event we want is blur. Okay, and then here we want to put the actual element that we want to, that we're talking about, which is going to be the class of customer. Okay, and then the last parameter will be the function. Okay, so whatever happens when we hit the blur event, this is where we're going to put the code. Okay, so the first thing we want to go do is get the new text. So we'll just say newly entered text. Okay, so variable new text is going to be equal to this meaning the span tag that we're clicking on. So we want the HTML that's in that. Okay, so when we do this, this text here is now the new text. All right. Okay, and then we also want the field. All right, now what I'm going to do is add a couple of data attributes so we can access it inside of jQuery. All right, so we want to go to our generated HTML again, and we want to add, let's see, I want to add two attributes, one called data field, which will basically be the name of the field, so it would be name and email, and then I want to create another one called data ID, which is just basically going to have the ID. So let's do this at the end of the span right here. Okay, we're going to create a new attribute, data, we'll do field first. So data field is going to be equal to name. Okay, and let me just copy this right here. Email. Now remember, these data attributes, they're custom. There's not a set attribute called data field. I'm creating that so that we can access it in our JavaScript. Okay, the next one is going to be data ID. Whoop. All right, now we want to pass the ID in there, okay, which I can grab right here. And then we just want to copy that and put that here. Alright. So now we can actually check this out with Chrome tools. Let's just take a look at this. So we have a span with the class of cursor and customer. Okay, content editable true. Then we have an attribute called data field, which is name, and then data ID, which is 3. Okay, and you have those for all of these. All right. Okay, let me get rid of this. Okay, so now what we want to do is grab those data fields. Okay, and the first one is going to be field. I'm going to put it into a variable. So field is going to be equal to 1 second. Okay, it's going to be equal to this, meaning the span tag dot data, which is basically a method to get a data field. Okay, and the field we want is actually called field. Okay, so this here is going to get the attribute data field. Okay, and then the ID okay, we're going to do the same thing, this dot data, and then in here is going to be ID. Okay, so that gives us the information we need to make an update. Okay, so now we're going to do the actual update. I'm going to do the transaction. Let me just copy from up here. Actually, I can copy this too. Okay, transaction is good. We do want read write. store, good. Okay, so the request we're going to do not delete, but we're going to do get. All right, so this transaction here is going to it's going to get the field that we want to change. We haven't updated it yet. Okay, to update it, we're going to use store.put, but this is just going to get it. So after we do this, we want to specify the callbacks, just like we've been doing. Request dot on success equals function. All right, so in here is where we want to do the actual update. Okay, so we're going to create a variable called data and set that to request dot result. All right, now what we want to do here is something like this. If we want to update the email field, we want to say data email equals new text. All right, so just so we can get the email and the name, we're going to do a little if statement. I apologize, I'm kind of losing my voice. Okay, so we're going to say here, if field, which is our variable coming from here. Okay, so if field is equal to name, then we want data dot name to equal new text, which is what we typed in. Okay, so else if field is equal to email, then we want to say data dot email equals new text. All right, so that specifies what we want to update. Okay, now we need to actually do the update. Okay, so we're going to create a variable, and I'm going to call this one request update, just so that we don't get confused with this request object. Okay, but basically we're going to do kind of the same thing. We're going to set this to store dot put data. Okay, so this put is what you want to use to update, and then we can do our handlers for request update. Okay, so we'll say request update dot on success Okay, and all we're going to do here is do a console log. Okay, we'll just say customer field updated. Okay, and then we just want to do the error callback. Customer field not updated. Alright, so hopefully this works. Reload. Let's go ahead and try to change something here. We'll change Smith to Samson. Okay, now if we reload, it stays there. Okay, let's try and change the email. Reload, and it stays there. So now we can do complete CRUD. We can create customers, we can read, update, and delete customers. So that's it for our application. Obviously, if this was a production app, you'd want to add more functionality, more fields. The way that we have it, it's pretty scalable. Basically, you can just add to your generated HTML and to your form, and when you define a customer up here, you obviously want to add more fields, things like that, but it's fairly scalable. But yeah, so that's it for chapter 10, last chapter. Alright, so now we'll go into the wrap up and we'll kind of cover what we've learned through the series.